Hey, what's up, and welcome to Q&A, the show where I take your questions from YouTube, Twitter, and everywhere in between and answer them here on this show. As you could imagine, the big trade news coming from Baker Mayfield. There's going to be a lot of questions about the Cleveland Browns right now, so let's just jump into it. And our first question is not about the whole Baker Mayfield or even the quarterback position. It's about the linebacking position, and it's from Rico, who says this. What role do you see Jacob Phillips playing this upcoming season? Will he be replacing Taki, or could he have a bigger role on the defense? All right, so I don't think Taki's role gets replaced because he's already a role player, right? If Taki were a starter, I would think that would be in the cards. But Taki is more of a run thumper, kind of a guy that you want out there only in base sets. You don't really want him out here in any skinny sets. So I think it'll be Jacob Phillips as the primary if things go to plan in camp, next to JOK, because Jacob Phillips, he played in a similar role to what the Browns want him to do when he was playing with Patrick Queen in LSU, where, Pat would run around and Jacob would be the big thumper and kind of hold things down in the middle. Athletic enough to cover most tight ends, athletic enough to cover some smaller, shallow routes if he needs to, so you can keep him out there in any situation, but big enough to be able to be good in run protection, right? He's that nice medium that you can keep out there when you have a smaller athletic guy. And that's what they did with him in LSU, with Patrick Queen. That's what I think the task will be with him and JOK, right? Where JOK will have the freedom to run around and be JOK, and Jacob Phillips can hold it down, and that'll be your two linebackers whenever you go outside of base, right? So whenever you're 5-2, whenever you're in 4-2-5, or however you want to align it, whatever coverage you want to call it, you can keep two linebackers out there if you're worried about the run, and those two will do a good job. So I think they will be doing that with Jacob Phillips. I think that's the hope. Whether that pans out, it's all depending on Jacob Phillips and how he plays in camp. But I do think the role is definitely there for him to take this offseason. It's just about, will he take it? Will he take that next step that they need him to do in order to give him that role? But he does fit the archetype. The next question is from Pee Wee, who says, are you okay with being hated by other fans? To be hated means that you're a threat to teams. Do you feel like we are now the villains of the season? Don't nobody really care that much, man. Like, maybe if they get close to winning the Super Bowl, people are going to come out in grandstand and act like their team has the moral high ground, when in the NFL, the reality is that the priority for a lot of teams isn't to be the most morally clean team in the world. It is to put together the team that can win the most football games. And we have thrown morals be damned in that pursuit. And almost every club has done that, right? A lot of clubs assign people who have been accused of horrific racism allegations. A lot of people have been, signing players who were part of bullying allegations, sexual assault, domestic violence. The laundry list is long of players that have been able to maintain an NFL career despite dubious off-the-field situations because some organization thought that they could play football well enough. And these aren't moral organizations. These guys don't keep their jobs based on morals, right? This is not college football where, a coach can stick around for 20 years because he does have a high graduation rate and he is good with his students. And maybe he goes 7-5 all the time, but you feel like he does good for the program. And even that has gone away in college football for the most part, especially at the major levels, right? But even then, that doesn't exist in the NFL. The NFL is about how many games you can win. And in that pursuit, people will be willing to take anybody that they feel like can help them win games. There's no team in the NFL that has a moral high ground on anything, right? Like, if they felt like a player could help them win, that team would be signing up to get that player. And that just is what it is. Other fans can feel how they feel about it, but at this point, maybe I'm jaded, maybe I've seen too much, but I'm just at the point to where it is what it is. Nobody really has the moral high ground. It's a bigger issue than just one team. And to pretend it is one team that's the problem is idiotic and purposely missing the point. If that's really your problem with the NFL, it is what they allow to be in it. But most of the time, it's just a reason to not like another team. Let's be honest here. But as far as being hated by other fans, who cares? Who really cares if other fans love you or hate? Like, I don't do this because I want other fans of other teams to love the Browns. They're going to love their team. So if the Browns are in the way of their team, they're going to hate us anyway, right? Like, that just is what it is. If you're the Ravens and the Browns are in the way, guess what? The Raven fans are going to hate the Browns fans because they're in the way. That's what matters. So I don't think the Browns are really going to be that big of a villain or anything like that. And I just don't think it matters all that much. Like, this is just kind of pointless of a thing to argue about. Well, the Browns be the villain. Who cares? Who cares? It's a football team. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think anybody is the villain when it comes to that. And I don't think anybody is going to be thinking about it all that deep. And if they are, they need to go outside just a little bit more often. I love football as much as anybody, but go watch some football outside. You don't got to be on Twitter all day. You know what I mean? Like, it's Ohio. A lot of us are in Ohio. If not, it's the United States for most of us. It's a football game near you. Go watch some football in person. You don't always got to be on Twitter. The next question comes from the algorithm. I'm in trouble. Who says, do you think the Browns can finally win the season opener if we somehow lose week one? Should we all just stay home for a week? I don't know what they're going to do in the season opener because Baker was terrible in the 2020 season opener. And then the 2019 season opener, he was awful. What was he in last year's season opener against the Chiefs? He was actually decent against the Chiefs in the season opener, but he's still 0-3. And that's assuming Baker starts there. I have no idea what to predict for the season opener because I don't know what the suspension is going to be. I don't know who's going to be starting in certain positions for each team. So we'll talk about week one once week one comes up. But right now we got a whole training camp and a preseason to focus on. But it is going to be an interesting conversation once we get to that point. The next question comes from Pedro, who says, hey, Q, suspension or no suspension aside, do you believe Watson's capacity of being his old self right away? And are you concerned with the INTs from Delpit, JOK, and others are getting him in practices and drills? Shout out from Brazil. Love your content. Appreciate you, Pedro. No, I'm not concerned about him throwing interceptions in practice. Every quarterback's going to throw interceptions in practice. And again, remember, you're seeing clips most of the time because anybody who has been to the Browns practice when Deshaun Watson has done anything close to actual football work has walked away glowing about him. Even people who are skeptical of bringing Deshaun Watson in walked away after watching 2 hours of him practice and go, oh, no, that's why you do this. He's clearly better than what they had before. Now, there's a reality to where he could be better than Baker, but not necessarily what the Browns need to win a championship. That's a whole nother conversation. But I have no worries about it. It's not like he's coming back from an injury. He's just coming back from not playing last year. He should be fine. Maybe he'll have a little rust here and there, but playing football or doing anything, think about anything you've done. And Deshaun Watson's probably played football for the better part. He's 27. So he's probably played football at least at a high level for the last 10 years, right? You're talking about upper level high school football. Then you're talking about college football at a very high level. Again, 4-year starter at Clemson. And then you're also talking about 3-year starter at Clemson, my bad. And then the NFL, football player. So you're talking about a guy who's been playing football at a very high level relative to where he could play for the last 10 years. You're also talking about somebody who's probably been playing football for like 15, 20 years at this point, right? He probably started when he was like 7. So think about anything you've done for 20 years in your life. Like, I've ridden bikes for 20 years in my life. Like, I love riding bikes. I'm a bike guy. I like to bike. I've rode bikes for 20 years. There have been times where I've gone a long time without riding a bike in my life. It doesn't take me more than a day to get back on the bike, feel like I'm normal on the bike, and be back to being me on the bike, right? Like doing all the things that I could usually do, because it is built in there, right? When you've done this for this long, it doesn't just go away. Now, if there were a physical issue, sure. There could be a mental issue, sure. But nothing like that has manifested itself or appears to have manifested itself in practice. And let's not forget, the Browns were a top 5 defense at the end of last year. They made Aaron Rodgers useless in the fourth quarter of a football game last year when Baker Mayfield continued to turn the ball over multiple times in that football game. They still were getting Aaron Rodgers off the field. This is one of the best secondaries in football. I'm not concerned if he's throwing a couple of interceptions to the best secondary in football. More or less, I'm more excited because now we have an offense that can legitimately challenge that defense in practice and get them to be better. And you have a secondary that's going to challenge the guy that you're paying $50 million to play quarterback for. So iron sharpens iron. That's all that is. You're going to see some interceptions. You're going to see some great touchdown throws. It's going to be back and forth because you have two great units going at it every day in practice that know exactly what each other's going to do. I mean, this is the year to get training camp tickets, honestly. I don't work for the Browns. I don't make no money if they sell them training camp tickets. I don't even know if they sell them anymore, but I would get them. The next question comes from Shorty Xander. What a name. Who says, do you think the defense will stay consistently good or be the up and down roller coaster like last year? I don't think so, because they weren't up and down at the end of the season. They were just down at the beginning and then back up at the end of the season. So I think that had more to do with them getting used to the system, some key players fitting in, some health things. I think they'll be fine. But I do appreciate the question. We're going to go to the next question, who says this from Andre Griffin, who says, realistically speaking, what are the chances that Baker turns up on our defense? I feel like our defense has seen him for 3 years. Nothing could surprise them. But I hear people that say Baker's chip on his shoulder could destroy the team that he came from. I don't see it. Hey, man, could Baker have a good game versus the Cleveland Browns? It is 100% possible that Baker could have a good game against the Cleveland Browns. Would that be because of the chip on his shoulder? I doubt it. I really doubt it. We've seen Baker's chip on his shoulder do more harm than good at times here in Cleveland, right? In the last 3-4 years he's been here. Here's what I'll say to this. Baker is going up against a secondary that knows him pretty well. The defensive line he's going to be going against versus his offensive line is not a favorable matchup. It will be interesting to see what happens there. And also, I will say this, I'll talk about that later because there's another question that comes up that asks me about that. But I would just say this. It's going to be interesting to see if Baker is the starter week 1 for the Panthers, what that looks like against the Cleveland Browns. But I think the defense is excited about that matchup as Baker Mayfield will be. And I think the defense, if we're talking about chips on their shoulder, they feel like they have a chip on their shoulder because if you're a top 5 defense, you expect to get into the playoffs. And they were very vocal about the fact that the offense just didn't hold their weight at the end of their season. So I think it's more than just Baker Mayfield that's going to have a chip on their shoulder week 1 if he's starting. But, we'll see what happens there. The next question comes from G, who says, what do you think are the chances that Baker starts for Carolina week 1? Do you think there is bad blood with him in certain defensive players? I kind of touched on this with my other question about the bad blood on the defensive players. But the reason I bring this question up is because a lot of people are assuming Baker's going to walk into Carolina and be the starter. He should. He's better than Sam Darnold. Matt Corral, yes. But I don't know. There seems to be some things in that situation that would be a little iffy for him. One, Ben McAdoo publicly noted, not a fan of Baker Mayfield, ranked him behind Mason Rudolph in the 2018 draft class. That's a bit of a concern. Ben McAdoo also does not like shorter quarterbacks, under 6'2" quarterbacks. He's been on the record with that. That's going to be something to watch. They're also in that weird situation where Ben McAdoo is hired because the Panthers organization wanted him hired, not necessarily because Matt Rule wants him there. We've seen that with Todd Haley and Hugh Jackson, what kind of a mess that can be. We've seen that with Todd Monken and Freddie Kitchens, what kind of mess that can be, right? So that's another thing to watch there too. Also, Sam Darnold's been there for a while. Sam Darnold's the guy that Ben McAdoo believes in. There was friction about trading for Baker Mayfield because there were some people, and I would imagine Ben McAdoo was one of them, that did not want Baker Mayfield. He's going to be fighting an uphill battle in Carolina. Now, if this all comes down to who can throw the football the best, Baker's going to be the starter, but that's just not what competitions always come down to. We have seen funky stuff happen with these quarterback competitions. So I would not assume that it goes as logically as people assume it will, because as somebody who has seen these type of dysfunctional quarterback rooms go down in Cleveland Browns history in the past, logic doesn't always win. Actually, logic's usually the underdog in these situations. So we'll see what happens here with that whole situation. But we'll address that week one. Again, this is not going to be we're going to follow Baker Mayfield in Carolina channel, but we'll talk about week one when week one gets here, right? We can stick to the Browns for the most part. The next question comes from Julian, who says, if Watson is suspended long-term and Brissett goes down early in the season with the injury, would Cleveland be comfortable with starting Dobbs, or would you want to sign a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo? I mean, if Jimmy's out there in free agency, sure, why not, right? But they're not going to make a big move. Honestly, if you get to that point, then what does it matter, right? You're just going to sign somebody. You might sign Garrett Gilbert for who knows, because he knows the offense. Worrying about that level of injury happening to your quarterback room is kind of irrelevant at that point, right? Once you're down to third string, you're down to third string. It's a wrap. It's a wrap. There's no salvaging it, but I appreciate the question, Julian. Other than that, I think that's it, actually. But that's going to be it for Q&A. I want to thank you guys for watching. You guys have a great day. Have a good night.